The year 2014 was a very special year for the Republic of Zambia and its 13 million citizens. 24th October 2014 marked the 50th anniversary of Zambia's independence, and the spirit of jubilee was in the air. But on 28th October 2014, just 4 days after Independence Day, a dark shadow fell upon the nation. On that day, the country's 5th president, Mr. Michael Chilufya-Sata, died in a hospital in London where he was receiving medical treatment. But even as the country mourned its departed leader and prepared for his burial, the inevitable necessity of replacing the Republican president was all too apparent. As was the case in 2008 following the untimely death of Zambia's 3rd president, Dr. Levi Patrick Mwanawasa, the Electoral Commission of Zambia, the body that is legally mandated to conduct elections in Zambia, once again had the onerous task of organizing a presidential election within 90 days as required by law. By the time 20th January 2015 was announced as the election date, the ECZ machinery had already swung into action to prepare for the election. Each and every department in the commission had a role to play in preparing for the elections. The presidential election of January 2015 had unique challenges. Priscilla Isaacs is the director of elections.
The biggest challenge of conducting a snap election is the time factor, because you have very little time in which to get organized to conduct the election. And it is expected that you conduct it efficiently as any other election. For us in Zambia, when a vacancy for the president occurs, whether by death or other reasons, you have to conduct an election within 90 days, and that is not a long period. So the time factor in which to get organized, the mobilization of funds, the materials that you need, all pose a challenge, but I'm glad that we met up to the challenge. For this election, a particular challenge was the time of the year that we ran the election. It was in the middle of the rainy season, and you know that the accessibility of most parts of rural areas in Zambia becomes very difficult. So we had to use the Zambia Air Force, and whilst we were able to use the Zambia Air Force and they were very efficient, the weather conditions posed to be another challenge in terms of getting all the staff and materials to the polling stations on time, and also with the collection of the results afterwards. Another big challenge was stakeholder perception. I think for us this election, it was an election where there were high levels of suspicion. But I'm pleased to say that the Commission was as open and transparent as it can be, and attended to all the issues that were raised by stakeholders. But it was definitely not an easy task. I'm sure people will remember what we went through at the National Results Center. So in terms of election materials, you find that the Elections Department, the Public Relations Department, and the Voter Education Department, and the IT Department all need different types of materials and equipment for their respective functions.
An assessment was conducted to see which materials are in stock and which ones have run out. And then necessary requisition documents were done and submitted to procurement department for them to outsource the service. We have delivered materials such as trays, polling booths, training materials, and the forms.
In order to facilitate citizens' participation in the electoral process and ensure a free, fair, credible, and peaceful election, the Commission has in place a Voter Education Department which conducts voter education and related activities.
To start with, we had to reconstitute our National Voter Education Committee, which we use as national trainers. So we had a meeting with them, prepared ourselves for training. And after we had trained the National Voter Education Committee members as national trainers, we now went into the 10 provinces to train our district trainers. Each district has 2 trainers, and these are the people we called to the provincial centers, and they were trained by our national trainers. So after that training, The 2 district trainers now went back into their respective districts in readiness to train the district voter education committees and the facilitators who were engaged. Now, when you look at facilitators, usually they're engaged from the district. So the district voter education committee has the responsibility of engaging or recruiting facilitators, a facilitator from each ward. We were constrained, so we still kept 1 facilitator. So now these facilitators who were engaged or who were recruited were now trained at district level. And after they were trained, these are the people now we have in the field. We may refer to them as foot soldiers, because they move within their wards to ensure that they talk to the people, educating them on the need or importance of them participating in this election.
Among the Commission's key tasks in this election was the preparation and implementation of public awareness programs to shed light on election issues.
The Commission has put in place several activities at different levels just to publicize this 2015 presidential election. We have electronic media mainly, but we have also included outdoor media where we are using billboards and LED screens. We also have put some information on printed materials, that the posters and some flyers and brochures. So that is what we have planned as a commission from Lusaka, and these messages are then distributed through various channels to reach out to the public. The main emphasis of our outreach is more on messages going through community radio stations, because we realize that the community radio stations are closer to the people. And so we have a huge chunk of our messages and programs going through community radio stations, where we have placed advertisements of this election. We have placed even other activities like the voter card replacement. We have also even gone ahead to mention even the nomination dates and the like through these channels. I think what is important to know about this media sensitization is that we have not sent messages in a vacuum, but what we try to do is target certain groups that we feel are important in our cause. And these comprise women groups, so we have messages for targeting more of the ordinary persons, the women. We also have messages for the disabled, those persons living with disabilities, and the youths, the young people. This is another group that we have also targeted. And of course, the general messages announcing the date of this election.
At every stage of the electoral process, the Electoral Commission had to ensure that stakeholders participating in activities and events of the Commission relating to the election were properly accredited. For some of the localized activities and events, accreditation was done at local level. Accreditation to permit access to the National Election Results Center was done at Lusaka's Intercontinental Hotel on 18th and 19th January. At a later stage of the electoral process, however, some stakeholders attempted to obtain accreditation outside the prescribed procedures, prompting a sharp response from the Director of Elections.
And then the other issue is now people want to force themselves onto accreditation. Did we not close accreditation, in fact, on Sunday, and we continued on Monday? Did we not close accreditation? I got some requests to consider special requests for people who had forgotten or whatever, and I granted those. Now, after harassing my staff, you expect me to approve accreditation?
At a meeting with the aspiring candidates on 10th December 2014, the Electoral Commission of Zambia chairperson Justice Irene Mambilima confirmed Wednesday 17th to Sunday 21st December 2014 as the period for nomination of presidential candidates. With 3 candidates scheduled to lodge nominations on each day, a total of 15 candidates were expected to file. The nominations took place at the Supreme Court of Zambia. Her Ladyship, the Acting Chief Justice of Zambia, Lombe Chibesakunda, was the returning officer for the presidential election. Each candidate was required to register 200 supporters who must be registered voters. Each of the supporters had their identity documents thoroughly checked before being granted access to the Supreme Court building. Security was extremely tight at the Supreme Court throughout the nomination process, and security personnel kept vigil to ensure that law and order prevailed. The supporters' identity and voters' cards were checked against the Electoral Commission's electronic register. Once verified, the supporters were entered on the forms for their respective candidates. Upon entering the Supreme Court, the presidential candidates presented their nomination papers for examination and verification. The candidates each had to pay a nomination fee of 10,000 kwacha, for which an official receipt was issued. Candidates then had an official portrait picture taken for use on the ballot paper. They were also allowed to submit their own preferred picture if they so wished. Each candidate was required to swear an oath of affirmation of Zambian citizenship. The candidates also had to make a declaration of compliance with the electoral regulations.
They also had to present the returning officer, Her Ladyship, the Acting Chief Justice of Zambia, Lombe Chibesakunda, a signed declaration of assets form. Upon receiving all the relevant documents, the returning officer, Her Ladyship, the Acting Chief Justice of Zambia, together with the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, commissioners and the Director of Elections, withdrew to chambers where they examined the documents to determine their validity. Supporters of the various candidates sang and danced outside the Supreme Court to show solidarity for their candidates. At every stage of the nomination process, the Electoral Commission was consistent in briefing the media and the public on the status of the process. However, not all the candidates actually filed in their nominations. Some of the candidates withdrew from the race for various reasons.
Trying because I'm still mourning President Sata, and I've got not only 200 supporters. The supporters that are supposed to be at Supreme Court grounds are 1,000, and I've taken them with my own buses to go to Kabwe, for the rally which is in Kabwe for Edgar Lungu.
A small problem that happened, as you are aware that I was fundraising, I was given a go forward by the police command, and now God blessed me that I have a very good response. But unfortunately, yesterday I talked to those funders. They were ready to give me today the cash so that I come with the cash here. But unfortunately today, due to I don't know what happened, one of them was there, 2 signatures only to the bank now to go and sign so that they withdraw the money they give me. That's what brought a bit problem.
Haven't you asked for an extension?
I have asked it, they have permitted me. They have granted me that.
Some political parties failed to show up when they were due to lodge in their nominations, as electoral officials and the media waited in vain. Upon satisfying herself that the nomination papers were valid, the returning officer, Her Ladyship the Acting Chief Justice, presented the successful candidates with a letter of determination of validity of nomination papers. Ultimately, only 11 out of 15 candidates successfully filed in their nominations.
Director of Elections Priscilla Isaacs had some reflections on the nomination exercise.
When you are conducting elections, elections are governed by the law. And so no matter how stringent the law may be, we have to follow the law, because in an election there's no such a thing as a small mistake. Even the tiniest of mistakes can lead to a petition. And the nomination rules provide that we cannot leave a nomination center before the stipulated closing time. We as a commission are the ones who regulate the time that a nomination center will remain open. And from past experience, especially for the presidential candidates, we saw that it takes quite a bit of time to process the 200 supporters, especially before we went digital with our register. Now we have the advantage of a digital register, an electronic register, so it means that we're able to process the 200 supporters as long as they are available, even within under an hour. Now, of course, some candidates did not have their 200 supporters available at the same time. Others did. So in cases where others, for those that did not have their 200 supporters all at once, we had to give them time to round them up. On some days, I think the weather was a factor. When it started raining at a time, a candidate was supposed to come before us. And even if a candidate is not able to file during their allocated slot on a particular day, they're at liberty to come back before the final closing of nominations, which was on the 7th day, on the last day at 17 hours. So whether people come or not, whether they come on time or not, as a commission, alongside with the returning officer, we have to make sure that we are available and stay throughout the time. I think the challenge that we had this time was the fact that, yes, it's people's democratic right to contest any election that they wish to, but we had the last 2 days, we were just more or less twiddling our toes, because all those that had registered to come and file nominations on the last 2 days, I think one didn't pitch up, and the rest came in to say that they had changed their minds. They were not going to contest the presidential election. So as a commission for the future, we are looking at to see how we can ensure that the people who show an interest do actually file their nomination, so that we don't lose time.
After the nomination exercise and the confirmation and validation of participating candidates in the election, the printing of ballot papers could now commence. The ballot papers for the January 20th presidential elections were printed in Johannesburg, South Africa by